Alrighty, tomorrow is election day here in the United States, and once upon a time, we would get all of the election results, if not by midnight, Eastern, because Eastern is the earliest of the time zones. We would at least get it by like maybe 3, 4 a.m. at the latest. I remember in 2012 watching the presidential election on TV. Watched all night until I fell asleep, probably around midnight, and woke up around 2 or 3, and Obama had won by then. And so it has always been the case in the United States that the votes are counted in one day. Now, there was an anomaly to that. That was Florida in 2000, which went on for a very long time. It was very annoying, and we had multiple recounts. But Florida fixed that. And now Florida counts all of our votes in one night, and things go very smoothly. Particularly since 2018, when they got rid of Brenda Snipes and that woman in Palm Beach County, everything goes well. We are now the gold standard in American elections. But now there's all these other states that have become as bad or worse than Florida in the year 2000. We've got Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, probably Nevada, all these places, Arizona, that in 2020 delayed the count and drug it out for days, if not weeks. And what do you know? At the end of that weeks-long process, the Democrats won. And that's probably what would have happened in 2000 had the Supreme Court not intervened on behalf of George W. Bush, because, Bush, he had pull within the system. There were people who did not want to see the election of 2000 ripped away from Mr. Bush. But when it came to old Donnie Trump in 2020, you did not have the same institutional support, and there was nobody who was going to intervene and stop the count in all of these states where they were clearly just dragging things out and, counting every vote that they could find, hidden in the back closet or in the trunk of a beat-up old Porsche. There was one congressional race in 2020 in New York State, excuse me. I still have that cough, in New York State, where God damn it, I hate getting scam calls while I'm recording. Don't you hate that when you're recording your silly little YouTube videos that are just audio because you're too lazy to actually make any kind of video and you just want to vent, and then all of a sudden you get these scam calls, somebody from it's a Maryland number, and you answer the phone and it's a computer voice, and the computer voice, it's like an interactive voice response thing, is a foreigner. Like they couldn't even get an American to record the scam audio for the robocall. But that's beside the point. Where the hell was I? I was coughing, and then I got a call. Oh, yeah, that House race up in New York State. That House race was decided weeks, maybe a month, maybe more, after election night, in which it looked like for weeks, a Republican was going to win in that district. And then all of a sudden they found a couple boxes of votes in the back closet, in the broom closet, under a case of Pine Sol. And somebody said, "Oops, what are these doing here? I guess these should have been counted." And they were. And what do you know? It was just enough to put the Democrat over the edge, and they were able to claim victory. So what's my point in all this? As someone who likes to watch elections, who enjoys the spectacle of election night, it's something that I look forward to. It's like a live sporting event for me. These people ruin the experience and spoil the fun by dragging it out for all these weeks, especially when they start to drag things out. I know what the end result is going to be, so it makes it even more boring. You know what they're doing, I know what they're doing, they know what they're doing, and they know that we know what they're doing. And so, the new normal sucks. It's not fun. And the worst part is they're pretending like the new normal it's always been this way, which obviously it hasn't. We used to be a modern, civilized, first world country. Now we're a banana republic. That's a new normal. That's not the old normal. And so the states that I would expect to drag out the vote would be, again, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, New York if it's close. If you see New York dragging it out and saying this is going to take a couple days, that means that, I don't want to say Zeldin won, because I would never doubt the end results. I would say that probably means that Zeldin's having a very good night. And it's going to take a couple of days, or however long it takes, for Hochul to overtake him. If Hochul wins, you will know on election night. But also, you will know on election night that Hochul will eventually win if they say that it's going to take a couple days for them to count all the votes. Now, Mastriano, it seems, is not doing too well. Could be a polling error, but he's in all the. What is interesting to me is that in all the polls, he is consistently behind Oz. He is trailing Oz. Oz is doing better in the polls than Mastriano is in the same polls. The same poll will find, Mastriano doing 5 points, or I think even more in some cases worse, than Oz is in the same poll. So we may hear on election night that Mastriano has lost. And then they might tell us that they're going to have to keep counting votes for, for the Senate race. And so the Senate race will be too close to call. And ultimately will, what do you want to call him? I'm trying to come up with a nickname based on that Mean Joe Green ad that he did. Mean John Green? I don't know. Doesn't work. Anyway, Fetterneck. Let's call him Fetterneck. I don't think that they could realistically push him over the edge. I think that would be too hard to take for too many people if they do it that way. Maybe they'll try. Hell, they certainly will try. But I think that's a tough one to pull over people. At the end of the day, I expect Oz to win. In Georgia, I think it's a similar story in reverse. Kemp seems too far ahead. I don't think that they're going to be able to try and play the game and pull Kemp down. Herschel, even him, even though he seems to have been not doing as well as Kemp, throughout the race, I still feel like he's going to be up a little too much for them to drag things out. But you know what? They could push it to a runoff. So I won't say that. That's probably what will happen. And then we'll have to have a redo in, like January? Early January, I think? Or is it like December? I forget when the runoff will be. They probably will be able to force Walker into a runoff. And I'm making all these predictions so that I can come back on Wednesday, see who's still counting, supposedly, and see if I called all the states right. Because it's going to be the ones that are close. And who knows, maybe even the ones that we aren't expecting to be that close. Like I was talking about New Mexico. If the Republicans have a really good night and they're competitive in New Mexico, let's say even they're ahead, around midnight, New Mexico might have to take the night off and come back and count, for a few more days. You never know. Oregon's going to be an interesting one. We have not seen shenanigans or fortification in Oregon in the past, really, because, such a deep blue state that they haven't really needed to. Nevada is a notoriously corrupt state. It was run by the mafia for a long time, and then you had Harry Reid and his political machine. But Harry Reid is dead now. His machine has been neglected by the DSA that took over the Nevada Democratic Party. And I don't know if they're capable of fortifying the election to stave off the victories of Lombardo and Laxalt. Arizona, on the other hand, I think that Maricopa County has proved to be quite tenacious and defiant. I think that they will try to do the same thing again as they did in 2020. They have made no apologies, and they are indignant. There's no other word to describe it. And the last state that I'll point out, I think, will be Michigan. I don't think it seems like Dixon already peaked, and that she's receded a little bit in the polls, both good polls and bad polls. So maybe old Whitmer will be able to come out with a victory on election night. But we'll see. If Dixon has a particularly good night, well then this is going to get drug out for a few days. One place where I don't think that will happen is Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled that a lot of the drop boxes and things from 2020 were unconstitutional. And it seems like Wisconsin has cleaned up its act a good deal. Additionally, Ron Johnson is popular incumbent. I don't think that he's going to have trouble being reelected. I always thought he was the favorite to win, before he even had a challenger. I thought that Ron Johnson was going to be able to hang on in Wisconsin. And the gubernatorial candidate in Wisconsin does not seem to be underperforming Johnson to much of a degree. So I think that both of them on election night probably will be called. In the past couple of days on this channel, I've been talking about the election and focused more on the Senate because that's an easier one, to keep track of in terms of numbers and things in my head. North Carolina has a very combative Supreme Court. Also have a Democratic governor. You might see North Carolina surprisingly slow roll things. Just North Carolina is usually close, but at the end of the day, the Republicans normally come out on top, and I fully expect that. When it comes to the Senate, if North Carolina, I think that North Carolina probably will slow roll their results. We may not know, but again, if it's a particularly good Republican night, they won't be able to hide it. But even still, the rate of change in North Carolina when it comes to national environment, it doesn't seem to be affected as much. North Carolina seems to have smaller shifts, either to the left or to the right, depending on, the national environment and the attitude of the cycle. Florida, on the other hand, we will have results at 8 p.m. Eastern. Excuse me. Anyway, we will know the winners immediately, and we will have a final count probably before midnight. I expect both DeSantis and Rubio, as I've said before, to be over 10 points in the lead. So how many Senate seats do I think will be undecided by the time I fall asleep tomorrow night? I would guess Masters, Walker, Oz, Bolduc. Those are the four that come to mind. Laxalt, perhaps. Those five. I think that we could have... That's five, right? Yeah. Double check my math. I think that we could come out of Tuesday night with 5 undecided Senate seats. And the control of the Senate could be up in the air. Now, ultimately, I do think that it would be very, very... It would take a lot of fortification for the Republicans at this point to not gain control of the Senate. Even with... It would even take a significant fortification to get them down to like 51, 51 seat majority. I think that they're going to be around 53, 54. That's in a fair environment. That is what I would expect. I think that the Republicans will hold every seat that they currently control, and of course that would include North Carolina and Ohio, which I don't know why they talk about Ohio at all. Ohio is not going to be close. And so the question will be the vulnerable Democrats. Kelly, Warnock, Fetterman. Oh, wait, I forgot. The Oz Fetterman seat is currently held by a Republican. So that is one vulnerable seat that is currently held by a Republican. Other than that, the other vulnerable seats, as I see it, are all Democrat, currently Democrat seats. Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. And of course, New Hampshire. How could I forget New Hampshire? And so I don't think that the Republicans will win all of them. If they did, I believe that would put them at 54. But I think that 54. I think that's a really good night for Republicans. That means that they swept all those races that I just talked about. But there's outliers that we're not talking about, which I mentioned before, like Smiley in Washington State. That one could come out of left field and be a Republican pickup. There's always a chance for a wild card that gets thrown in there and adds one more to the Republican column. And the reason why I would put the wild card, if there is one, on the Republican side is because this is a particularly good Republican year. In 2018, I would have been talking about wild card seats that could have gone to the Democrats. Like, say, the governorship in Kansas. You had a particularly unpopular Republican governor there, and they voted for a Democrat to be their governor. I don't expect that woman who was elected in 2018 to win re-election. So with that said, tomorrow night, I think that by the end of the night, the seats that will have been called, I think it'll probably be up to like 48 or 49 for the Republicans. The Democrats will have less seats, but because there will be more up for grabs. And so even if at the end of the night the Republicans were able to hang on to half of those seats that are up for grabs going into the election week, as we should now know it, then they're going to have a somewhat comfortable majority in the Senate. I mean, to me, 53 is not safe for them, because then you've got Romney, Collins, and Murkowski that could defect to the Democrats, and then Kamala Harris is the tiebreaker. Republicans really need 54 to have even a rhino majority, because you've got people like Romney, Collins, and Murkowski that aren't even loyal to the rhinos. That is, unless Murkowski is defeated by, that somewhat more conservative Republican in Alaska, but I don't foresee that. McConnell's been putting a lot of money in to defend Murkowski. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.